Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today I want to bring you guys a different kind of PC build video. So with my college schedule and my limited video release dates, I thought I'd go ahead and revamp the way that this channel did PC builds in a more efficient and better way. So in the past, I've usually done single PC build videos with a certain price, and I usually go down the list of the parts and list off every single little specification of each part, but I'm going to go ahead and change a few things up. So I'm going to go ahead and compress a lot of themed builds into one video. So like with this is the budget series of gaming PCs, so I'm combining the $400, $500, and $600 gaming PCs into one video. But rather than just rambling on about the specs of each computer, I'm still going to list off the specs and the prices, but I'm going to give more information about the pros and cons of each gaming PC through the data, scenarios, and personal gaming PC and PC building experiences that I've had, and give you guys a more comprehensive view of what you guys are getting into for what you want to build for your next gaming PC. So hopefully this will be a better format for pretty much all of you current subscribers and future viewers. So let's get into the builds. If you want the absolute cheapest PC games on the internet with the largest discounts that even exceed those of Steam Summer Sale games, then make sure to check out g2a.com, and a link for that will be in the description down below. So for the first gaming PC on this list, I'm going to list off my recommended $400 gaming PC, which is consistent of an Intel Core i3-16100, an MSI H1110M Pro VD motherboard, a Crucial Blitzkrieg Sport 8GB dual channel RAM kit. This has a Western Digital Blue 1TB hard drive, an EVGA 430W 80 plus efficiency rating power supply, a Cougar Spike micro ATX tower case, and finally a Gigabyte RX 460. And all this, as I said, totals to about $430. Anyways, for the pros of this PC, this is still actually for $400 quite the capable 1080p gaming computer. It's shown in benchmarks that the i3-6100 and RX 460 do quite well in modern day games, with the exception of, those really high-end PC games that take a lot to run, like Witcher 3. But regardless, you're going to be getting some pretty high frame rates at like normal to high settings in the majority of PC games, which is really good for the price of this gaming PC. Not to mention, for $400 we were able to stick in about 8GB of RAM, which is going to be enough for any sort of gaming or extra applications you're going to be throwing onto this gaming PC. And finally, since this is something you guys may not realize, but a lot of the components in this build are low wattage, which means that this PC is going to be outputting not a lot of heat and not a lot of sound, since all the components are pretty low wattage, which I find could be a really nice thing. Say if you're in a Skype call and you're talking to your friends and you're gaming and you don't want your computer to be super loud, well, this computer won't exactly be the case for that. Now for the cons for this PC, I will say that this PC doesn't have an overclockable processor, since the i3-6100 is locked, but I wouldn't concern too much over that, since the base clock speed of the i3-6100 is at a pretty impressive 3.7 GHz, so really there isn't that much to worry about. But this computer cannot overclock if you just want a definite answer over that. Also on top of that, this computer has a 430W 80 plus efficiency rating power supply, which is enough to support everything in this build. But say you wanted to upgrade this computer in the future with a more powerful graphics card or processor, there's a good chance you're probably going to need to replace the power supply along with that to support the extra wattage needed for those new upgrades. And finally, if you can, I would recommend ponying up about like an extra $70 for an SSD. If you can't afford it, it's just a nice little convenience to have in any gaming PC in any price range, but it's just a simple recommendation since this computer doesn't have an SSD in it. But if you can't afford it, don't worry, because the 1TB Western Digital Blue hard drive in this gaming PC is still going to do really good for you. Now for the $500 build, this build is consistent of the Intel Core i3-6100, the MSI Pro VD H1110M motherboard, Crucial Blitzkrieg Sport 8GB RAM kit dual channel is in this PC. This also has a 1TB Western Digital Blue hard drive, but differentiating a bit from the other build, this has an AMD RX 470 along with a Corsair 100R with a window, and finally an EVGA 500B power supply. Now this is kind of the same computer as the $400 computer, just with better graphics performance, a more higher wattage and more efficient power supply. and a cooler looking case with a window. Now with the RX 470 in comparison with the RX 460 in the $400 build, you're going to get about a 5 to 20 FPS increase in the majority of PC games depending on the game. But certainly the extra price of getting that 470 is definitely going to show over that RX 460, as it pretty much, the 470 has a better chipset with the Polaris 10 chipset, and it has an extra 2 gigabytes of VRAM on the card itself. Also, this build features, in my opinion, a better power supply because while it does have enough wattage to support the build, it has the 80 plus bronze efficiency rating rather than the 80 plus efficiency rating, so it's going to be a bit more power efficient when it comes to saving money on your power bill in terms of the power supply usage. And also, this has an extra 70 watts on it over the 430 watt power supply in the other build, which is going to be a bit better if you say you want to upgrade your GPU to something that's mid-range rather than low range, and it's not going to be that much wattage, so there's a bit more leeway in terms of upgrading with the wattage available on this power supply. But if you are going to go crazy, like get a 1080, then you're probably going to need to get a 600 watt power supply, but the 500 should do a pretty good job. But as for the cons, sort of the same thing as the other computer. The i3 is not overclockable, but that isn't something to worry about. And lastly, if you can get an SSD in this build, I would recommend it since it would be something pretty nice to have. Now finally, the last build that we have in this video is the $600 build, which is consistent of the Intel Core i5-6400, the MSI Pro VD110M motherboard, the Crucial Bliss 8GB RAM kit in dual channel. This also has a Western Digital Blue 1TB hard drive, and this has a Sapphire Radeon RX 480. This also has a Fractal Design Define S, which is the silent edition of the Define. And lastly, this has a EVGA 500B power supply, which in total is going to be about $640, which is a bit more than the $600 price tag advertised, but that money will certainly show, as you can see in the pros and cons list that I'm going to list out right now. And if you were curious, out of the PC builds on this list, this is by far, in my opinion, the best bang for the buck you can get. Even though it is the most expensive, it is going to give you the best performance, in my opinion, for the dollar that you're paying in comparison to the other two builds on this list. So let's go ahead and talk about performance. The i5-6400 quad core, in addition to the RX 480 in this build, is going to be awesome, especially for the price. If you're wanting a gaming PC that's basically going to be the Witcher 3 Ultra 1080p gaming PC at like the cheapest price point possible, then this $640 build is going to be the case for that, because this PC can actually run Witcher 3 at ultra settings at just about 60 FPS, which is pretty impressive for the price. So if we're talking about performance, this gaming PC is going to have no troubles when it comes to running any game at 1080p at ultra settings, high settings, you name it. This PC is probably going to handle it quite well. But if we go up to 1440p, it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle, but you can probably set your games to about like medium settings and this PC could handle it fine. So as I said, for the price, you're getting some pretty awesome performance. Not to mention, having the luxury of a quad core i5, especially in this price of a gaming PC, is something very valuable in my opinion. You're going to notice the speed difference, maybe not in everyday use, but when it comes to gaming, you're going to notice those extra 2 cores are going to come in really handy. And especially when it comes to rendering your 3D models or exporting videos, those extra 2 cores in the i5 or the i3 are certainly going to show when it comes to those applications and gaming. And lastly, in this build, it features a Fractal Design Define S, which is the silent version of the Define case series. And the reason why I included this case and kind of made the build more expensive than what it needed to be is just because right now it's at a pretty good price, and I highly recommend this case even if it doesn't have a window, because for one, it's a Fractal case and they are made with extremely high build quality. They're very sturdy and they look pretty modern and sleek, which I find really appealing to today's PC gaming environment and desk setups and stuff like that. But more importantly, it's the silent version, which you may think, you know, I have to sacrifice a window or, you know, extra airflow for it, but it's gonna be really nice whenever you're playing games with your friends on Skype and you don't want your computer to be like an air engine in the background. So having that silent damping inside the Define case is going to be really nice if you just want to have a silent PC that's not going to interrupt your gaming experience with your friends, or say you're doing a Let's Play, you know, you don't want your gaming PC to be overheard over your microphone. So it's just a nice little addition that I put onto this PC. Now for the cons, the only con I could think of, like with the other two builds, is that if you can afford an SSD, I would recommend just jumping like an extra $70 into this build and getting like a 120 gigabyte SSD, since it's a nice thing to have. Like, it's gonna make your life like just 1% better if you get an SSD. That's just that's a pretty good statement to say. But if you can't afford it, that's perfectly fine. It's only a 1% change in your life in terms of how good it is. But anyways, it's not going to be the end of the world if you can't afford an SSD, since the 1TB Western Digital Blue hard drive is going to be enough to suffice for this gaming PC. But as I said, it is nice if you get an SSD. Anyways though, thank you guys so much for watching the build series video. If you guys like this new format, definitely shoot out a comment in the comment section down below if you guys enjoy the new format or not, if there's any recommendations you have to, you know, changing a few things up, and pretty much that's it. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and all that. And this is the ScatterVolt channel signing out.